After his wife hit a $20 million jackpot, she kicked him to the curb, laughing as she signed the divorce papers. "You'll leave with nothing," she sneered. But what she didn't know, her father's ironclad prenup was about to flip the entire courtroom and her life upside down. The alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., slicing through the stillness of a small Brooklyn apartment. Alden Brooks swung his legs over the side of the bed, already bracing for another day on the construction site. At 32, years of hard labor had etched themselves into his posture, but he moved with quiet purpose. In 30 minutes, he'd be on a subway headed toward another Manhattan high-rise project. Before stepping out, he followed his ritual. He pressed a gentle kiss to his sleeping wife's temple and paused outside his daughter's room, watching 6-year-old Tessie sleep. That moment, brief and silent, was the anchor to his long days. By the time his boots hit the pavement, the city was already humming, and Alden was exactly where he belonged, among steel beams and concrete, building something real. On the job site, Alden wasn't the loudest, but no one questioned his leadership. He studied blueprints during lunch while others scrolled their phones. He never missed a shift. When asked to work weekends, he didn't hesitate. It wasn't pride, it was necessity. Every hour meant more security for Tessie and Sloan. Back home, life was different. Sloan didn't work, hadn't since their daughter was born. She came from a family that wasn't quite rich, but rich enough to make Alden feel like he was always trying to catch up. Still, he didn't complain. He loved Sloan. He respected her desire to raise Tessie full-time. He never once threw it in her face that he carried all the weight. Evenings were sacred. Sloan would be in the kitchen, or sometimes just browsing her laptop. But Tessie was always waiting. When Alden walked through the door, she'd shout, "Daddy!" and leap into his arms, ignoring the dust on his clothes. Those hugs erased a day's worth of exhaustion. After dinner, while Sloan scrolled through her phone or chatted with her club friends, Alden read bedtime stories. Tessie always asked for the one about the brave princess who built her own castle. That part always made him smile. He didn't feel resentful. Not yet. He just wanted to give them more. He was saving for a down payment on a house, hoping to move them out of their cramped apartment. Sloan never asked for much, but she also never said thank you. Still, Alden believed they were a team. He believed love was enough. Then everything changed on a random Thursday morning. Sloan had bought a scratch-off ticket on a whim while grabbing milk from the corner store. 5 numbers, a silver coating, and a stroke of absurd luck later. She was holding a ticket worth $20 million. She screamed so loud the neighbors came running. Within an hour, half the building knew. Champagne bottles appeared. Neighbors clapped her on the back like she was a hometown hero. When Alden arrived, breathless and still in his work boots, Sloan was glowing in the center of it all, basking in the attention. He pulled her into his arms. This was their moment, their escape from struggle. He lifted Tessie into the air and whispered, "We're going to be okay now." That night, while the rest of the building celebrated, Alden stayed up researching. Investment strategies, trusts, taxes, college funds. He scribbled notes in a spiral notebook, circling the phrase, "Make it last." He didn't want to waste the opportunity. He wanted to protect their future. But over the next 3 weeks, something began to unravel. Sloan became distracted. She spent hours on her phone, researching Manhattan condos and luxury brands. When Alden suggested a financial plan, she brushed him off. "Later. I just need time to breathe." The shift was subtle at first, then came the shopping bags. Designer items appeared, followed by cryptic phone calls and disappearing afternoons. "It's my money, Alden," she snapped one night. "I bought the ticket, not you." He didn't know how to respond. The woman he'd loved for 8 years was changing before his eyes, and he couldn't stop it. The distance grew. Conversations became transactional. Tessie noticed. "Why doesn't Mommy come to dinner anymore?" she asked. Alden didn't have an answer. Then came the Thursday that broke everything. He arrived home from work to find the apartment unusually quiet. Tessie was gone, sent to her grandmother's without Alden's knowledge. Sloan sat in the living room, a manila envelope on her lap. Her voice was cold, rehearsed. "I want a divorce." Alden stood frozen, trying to process the words. "I've outgrown this life," she said flatly. "You were a stepping stone. You've always been beneath me, and I'm not giving you a dime." She walked past him without another word. Just like that, 8 years of marriage ended in silence. But Sloane had forgotten something. A single line in a document signed years ago. A prenup written by her own father that Alden had signed without question because he believed in love more than money. And now, that forgotten signature would become the beginning of her downfall. The manila envelope sat on the kitchen counter for 2 days before Alden had the courage to open it. Divorce papers, clean, clinical, final. Sloane had already signed her part. There was a note paperclipped to the front, written in her familiar handwriting, but with none of the warmth it used to carry. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just sign. Alden didn't. Not yet. Instead, he went to work every day as usual, pretending to be fine. He kissed Tessie goodbye, tied his boots, and boarded the train like everything was normal. But inside, something had cracked. And when he couldn't fake it anymore, he picked up the phone and called the one person who wouldn't give him pity. Just facts. Connor Hale. They'd met in high school, two Brooklyn kids from different ends of the spectrum. Connor had the brains, Alden had the grit. Years later, Connor was running a law office in Manhattan, and Alden had built half the city's skyline. Their lives had taken different routes, but they'd stayed close. When Alden explained the situation, Connor didn't waste time with sympathy. "Bring me the papers," he said, "and everything else, emails, texts, bank statements, anything you think might matter." At Connor's office the next day, Alden laid it all out. He didn't have much. They hadn't shared many accounts. Sloane had kept everything in her name after the lottery win. She even stopped letting him pick Tessie up from school, saying she had it handled. "She's cutting me out," Alden said quietly. Connor leaned back in his chair, thinking. "Did you two ever sign anything before the marriage? Any prenup? Agreement?" Alden hesitated, then remembered. A dinner, a folder, a signature. "Yes," he said slowly. "Her father made me sign a prenup the night we got engaged. I never really read it. I just signed it." Connor's eyes sharpened. "Do you still have it?" Alden nodded. "It's in my sock drawer." Never looked at it again after that night. "Get it," Connor said. "Right now." When Alden returned that evening with the document, Connor spent 2 hours going through every line. Then he looked up and smiled for the first time all day. "She made a mistake," he said. "A big one." The prenup, drafted by Sloane's father, an old-school real estate mogul who believed in protecting the family fortune, contained a clause that would become Sloane's undoing. All assets acquired during the marriage, regardless of which party obtains them, are considered marital property subject to equitable distribution. "She bought the lottery ticket while you were married," Connor said. "That money isn't hers. It's both of yours." Alden's heart was pounding. "But she says it's hers." "It doesn't matter what she says. The law says otherwise. And this document? Her father wrote it. Her lawyer won't be able to touch it." Suddenly, Alden wasn't the one backed into a corner. He was the one holding the match near the fuse. The next few weeks moved quickly. Connor filed the paperwork. Sloane's attorney, an expensive bulldog known for winning ugly, called to try and intimidate them. "She's not offering anything," the lawyer said smugly. "And if your client wants to play hardball, we're ready." Connor didn't flinch. "Tell your client we're bringing the prenup to court." There was a pause. Then the call ended. Back home, Alden did his best to shield Tessie from the tension. He picked her up from school, packed her lunches, read her bedtime stories. When she asked where Mommy was, he said she was working on something important. It was the closest thing to the truth he could offer. Sloane had all but disappeared. She'd moved into a temporary apartment in the city, bought with lottery money, and surrounded herself with a new crowd. People who liked her for her wealth, not her past. She thought she'd won. Then the court date arrived. Alden showed up early, wearing the same suit he'd worn on his wedding day. It was a little tighter now, but it still fit. He held Tessie's hand as they walked through the courthouse. Connor met them at the entrance. Inside, reporters waited. The story had leaked, a construction worker being left penniless by a millionaire wife. Sloane arrived late, flanked by her lawyer and her father, Grant Harrington. She didn't acknowledge Alden. She didn't even glance at Tessie. But when she sat at the plaintiff's table and saw the prenup laid out on the judge's desk, her expression finally cracked. She leaned toward her attorney, whispering something with urgency. He nodded stiffly, then stood to request a recess. Denied. The judge, a seasoned woman with no tolerance for theatrics, opened the case. Sloane's lawyer began with confidence, claiming she had independently purchased the ticket and should retain the winnings. He emphasized her family background, her connections, her right to financial independence. Connor rose calmly. Your Honor, we have a prenuptial agreement, drafted by the plaintiff's father, signed by both parties. It clearly states that all assets gained during the marriage are to be split evenly. He handed the document to the clerk. The judge reviewed it carefully. The room was silent. After several tense minutes, she spoke. This court recognizes the validity of the agreement. All assets acquired during the marriage, regardless of who purchased or claimed them, are subject to equitable division. Sloane's lips parted slightly. She blinked. Once, twice. The judge continued. Therefore, the $20 million lottery winnings fall under marital property. The court orders a 50-50th distribution. The room erupted. Reporters scrambled. Phones buzzed. Sloane sat motionless, eyes wide, her victory evaporating in real time. Alden didn't celebrate. He just looked down at his daughter, who had no idea what had just happened, and smiled. The woman who had tried to throw him away with nothing was now forced to hand him half of everything. And she hadn't even hit rock bottom yet. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Sloane Harrington Brooks, once confident and untouchable, now sat frozen as the reality sank in. Half of the $20 million she had claimed as hers was legally Alden's. She tried to object. Her voice cracked as she demanded a review, insisted it wasn't fair. But the judge was clear. The prenup, signed willingly and drafted by her own father, had spoken. The court had spoken. There was nothing left to argue. Alden sat still, composed, watching the woman he'd once called his wife unravel in front of the gallery. Her attorney leaned in to calm her, but Sloane wasn't listening. Her world, built on arrogance, assumption, and entitlement, was crumbling in public. Then, just when the room thought the drama had reached its peak, Sloane snapped. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair backwards. Pointing at Alden, her voice shook with rage. You want half? Fine. Take it. Take the money. Take the kid, too. I don't care anymore. The words echoed like a slap. Even seasoned courtroom reporters looked up, unsure they had heard her correctly. The judge raised an eyebrow, pausing her notes. Alden didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Sloane, but his face gave nothing away. The judge asked Sloane to repeat her statement. I'm done. Let him have custody. I want out, of all of it. She didn't stutter. She didn't hesitate. She just gave up. It was the moment that stunned the entire room. Not the money, not the prenup, but a mother casually abandoning her daughter for the sake of pride and spite. No one expected it. Not even her father. Grant Harrington's expression shifted for the first time during the proceedings. His carefully crafted mask cracked at the edges. He tried to whisper something to his daughter, to get her to sit down, to take it back. But she refused. I'm tired of pretending. Tired of this life. He can have it. Judge Collins's pen moved swiftly across the page. Let the record show that Mrs. Brooks has voluntarily relinquished primary custody of the minor child, she said. The court grants full legal and physical custody to Mr. Alden Brooks, effective immediately. Alden didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He stood quietly, walked over to where Tessie sat next to the court-appointed advocate, and crouched to her level. She looked confused but calm. She didn't understand the words being spoken, but she understood her father's presence. Are we going home now? She asked, eyes wide. He nodded. Yes, sweetheart, we're going home. She took his hand without hesitation. Behind them, Sloane looked around the courtroom as if suddenly waking from a dream. Her eyes darted from the reporters to her father to the judge, searching for a way to take it all back. But it was too late. The judgment had been entered. Her words had been recorded. Her intentions had been made clear. The courtroom slowly emptied. Spectators murmured. Phones buzzed. Reporters rushed outside to file their stories. Alden stepped out into the hallway with Tessie, her small hand in his. Connor followed, briefcase in hand. You okay? Connor asked. Alden nodded. Yeah, she gave up everything. Actually, Connor said, she gave up the only thing that mattered. As they waited for the elevator, Tessie tugged at her dad's arm. Can we have pancakes for dinner? He smiled. You got it. Across the city, Sloane's apartment, once a monument to her independence, felt quieter than usual. She returned to it alone. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. She poured a drink, but it didn't settle her nerves. In the days that followed, news of the courtroom drama spread quickly. Social media latched onto the story. Millionaire wife loses big in divorce showdown. Comment sections were brutal. Sloane's former friends from the country club stopped returning her messages. Her new crowd, the ones who called when the money first came in, disappeared as fast as they'd arrived. Her father stopped calling. Her lawyer withdrew as counsel. She had her half of the money, but it didn't feel like a win. Meanwhile, Alden got to work. He didn't buy a sports car. He didn't move into a penthouse. Instead, he opened a savings account in Tessie's name. He paid off debts. He enrolled in night classes in business finance. He hired a financial advisor and met with Connor twice a week to develop a long-term strategy. By year's end, he had invested in a small construction startup, his own. Brooks Build Partners started as a two-person crew. Within 2 years, it was bidding on major city contracts. Alden didn't just rebuild. He leveled up. And Tessie, she flourished. She stayed in her school, surrounded by friends and routine. Her father never missed a parent-teacher conference or a science fair. He packed her lunches, helped with homework, and made sure she never felt the void her mother left behind. The scandal faded from headlines, but Sloane's life never returned to what it was. And Grant Harrington? He never recovered from the fallout of the courtroom spectacle. The loss of public credibility led investors to pull out of several major projects. Within a few years, Harrington Holdings teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. But that chapter, Sloane's final reckoning, was still to come. For now, Alden had won, not through revenge, not through bitterness, but by staying steady while everything else fell apart, and by never forgetting what really mattered. Alden Brooks never looked back. Once the court finalized the divorce and granted him custody of Tessie, he knew there was no time to celebrate. The media attention faded quickly, but the responsibility remained. He wasn't just a construction foreman anymore. He was a father with a second chance and $10 million to manage carefully. He did what Sloane never expected. He stayed grounded. Within days of receiving his half of the lottery winnings, Alden met with a financial planner. No flashy purchases, no sudden lifestyle changes. He bought a reliable used truck, upgraded their apartment in Brooklyn to a safer neighborhood, and put the rest away in well-researched investments. A significant portion went into a trust for Tessie, one she wouldn't be able to touch until college. He also started building something of his own. By the end of the first year, Brooks Build Partners was born, his own construction company, built on the reputation he'd earned through years of hard labor and integrity. He hired skilled workers who'd been laid off from other projects and treated them with respect. Word spread fast. By the second year, his company was winning city contracts. By year 3, he had crews on multiple sites, and his name was known in every borough. But Alden didn't let the growth go to his head. He stayed focused on Tessie. They developed routines, Saturday pancakes, Sunday hikes, movie nights. He became a familiar face at her school, always showing up, always engaged. Teachers noted how stable and joyful Tessie seemed, even after everything she'd witnessed. Her father's presence made all the difference. Meanwhile, Sloane's life took a very different turn. For the first year after the divorce, she lived like someone on a victory lap. She leased a luxury condo in Manhattan, posted photos from high-end restaurants, went on weekend getaways, and surrounded herself with people who complimented her style and status. She attended charity galas, shopped at designer boutiques, and gave interviews about moving on. But the money went fast, too fast. By year 2, the expenses started catching up. The condo fees alone burned through thousands monthly. Designer purchases piled up while returns were forgotten. Investment opportunities came and went, mostly scams sold by smooth-talking brokers who saw an easy target. Sloane ignored warnings. She believed her luck would last. It didn't. Friends stopped calling when the invites stopped flowing. The flashy crowd moved on to newer, wealthier circles. Sloane wasn't rich anymore. She was just another person trying to look the part. Credit cards maxed out, rent payments fell behind. The lifestyle she'd built on pride and fantasy collapsed quietly. And when things got desperate, she turned to the one person she never thought she'd need again. Her father, Grant Harrington, once a powerful figure in New York real estate, had his own problems. A string of bad investments and legal disputes drained his company's reserves. His reputation took a hit after Sloane's courtroom meltdown, especially when word got out that the prenup he drafted had backfired spectacularly. Clients left, partners pulled out. Creditors started circling. By year 5, Harrington Holdings was hemorrhaging money, and Grant knew it was only a matter of time before the empire he'd built collapsed entirely. That's when Sloane came back, not to reconnect, not to apologize, but to ask for help. "I need a new start," she told him. "Just a little help until I can get back on my feet." Grant looked at his daughter and saw not a victim of bad luck, but someone who had wasted every opportunity handed to her. Still, he wasn't ready to give up. He had one last idea. They made a call. Alden was in his midtown office when the receptionist buzzed. "You have visitors." When he looked up, he saw them through the glass. Sloane, her father, and her mother. All three stood there, smaller somehow, aged not just by time but by choices. They were escorted into the office. No greetings, no small talk. Grant spoke first. "We're in trouble," he admitted. "Our company is failing. We need a partner, someone the city trusts, someone like you." Alden leaned back in his chair. He didn't need to ask why they were really there. Sloane didn't meet his eyes. Her voice, when it finally came, was unsteady. "I know I messed up, but this could be a fresh start, for all of us." Alden looked at them, both. 5 years ago, these were the people who looked down on him, who tried to erase him, who believed money gave them the right to control everything. Now they were asking him for help. He stood slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the skyline, the one he'd helped build piece by piece, not just with his hands, but with years of sacrifice. "When I had nothing," he said quietly, "you saw me as disposable. When I needed support, you turned your backs." Sloane's voice cracked. "Please, Alden." He turned back to face them. "My business isn't built on revenge, but it's not built on charity either. I'm building something for Tessie's future, not to save the people who tried to break us." He walked to the door and opened it. "This is where it ends." They didn't argue. They just stood there, stunned. Then they walked out, defeated. There was no dramatic exit, no final insult, just silence. Back at his desk, Alden sat down, opened his drawer, and pulled out Tessie's latest school photo. She was 11 now, confident, bright, full of potential. The future was hers, and thanks to the choices he made, it would be solid, steady, and full of promise. Alden Brooks didn't just move on, he built forward. 5 years after the courtroom battle that changed his life, he had become a quiet force in the construction world. Brooks Build Partners grew from a modest crew into one of the most respected firms in the city. Contracts rolled in not just because his company delivered, but because people trusted Alden. He was the guy who showed up early, paid fair, and kept his word. He didn't need billboards or interviews. His work spoke for itself. And at the center of it all was Tessie. She was 11 now, thriving. School came easy to her, but Alden never let her coast. He helped with homework, sat through every school play, clapped the loudest at every recital. Her teachers described her as focused, kind, and curious. She had friends, goals, and, most of all, stability. Alden made sure her life wasn't defined by the headlines or the chaos that came before. He never badmouthed Sloane. He answered questions honestly but gently, keeping Tessie's trust at the center of every choice. They still lived in Brooklyn. Not the cramped apartment of the past, but a modest home in a quiet neighborhood with space to breathe. Alden could have moved them anywhere, but he liked staying close to his roots. It reminded him where he started and why it mattered not to forget. He didn't miss the old life. Not the pretending, not the tension, not the feeling of being out of place in his own home. Meanwhile, Sloane faded from public view. After the rejection in Alden's office, she tried to regroup. She moved out of the city, took on freelance work, tried her hand at consulting. But nothing stuck. The crowd she once entertained had long moved on. Invitations dried up. So did sympathy. The woman who once had everything was now just another name people used as a cautionary tale. Her father's company folded. Bankruptcy filings made headlines briefly, then disappeared into the next news cycle. Grant Harrington's reputation never recovered. No one wanted to do business with the man whose daughter made national news for abandoning her family over a jackpot. His legacy didn't end in scandal. It ended in silence. Years later, Sloan sent a letter. It was handwritten, brief, and mailed without a return address. She didn't ask for money. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She just said she hoped Tessie was happy and that she'd made peace with the past. Alden read it once. Then he folded it neatly and placed it in a box with other things from that chapter of his life. He didn't need to respond. Some people learn too late that the cost of pride is everything. The lesson was clear. Money doesn't change people. It reveals them. Sloan saw the lottery as her ticket to freedom. Alden saw it as a chance to secure the future. One lost everything trying to prove her worth. The other built a life by remembering his. And Tessie? She carried the best of both worlds. Her mother's ambition, her father's resilience. But she had something neither of them started with: direction. On her 12th birthday, Alden gave her a journal. Write everything down, he told her. The good, the bad, and the lessons. She opened it that night and began writing. About school, about her dreams, about how her dad always showed up, even when things were hard. That journal would grow into something more someday. Maybe a story, maybe a guide, maybe just a record of how a little girl became a woman who knew her worth. As Alden tucked her in that night, she asked him something she hadn't brought up in years. Do you think Mom ever thinks about me? Alden paused. I think she does, but some people don't know how to be the kind of parent you need. Tessie nodded. I'm glad I got the right one. He kissed her forehead and turned off the light. Downstairs, he opened his laptop and reviewed blueprints for a new school project. Not for profit, but for the community. A way to give back, a way to teach his daughter that success isn't about what you take, but what you build. The past didn't haunt him, it reminded him. Every mistake, every betrayal, every quiet decision had led here, to a life built not on luck, but on purpose. He hadn't won by chance. He'd won by staying steady, by protecting what mattered, by walking away from people who only valued him when he was useful. The final chapter wasn't revenge, it was redemption, and it belonged to the man who never stopped showing up.